Yes, friends. In today's lesson, we'll continue with how to use the string class in Java. So, what is this string class? Let's talk about it a bit. First, let's understand the logic behind it. Of course, there are a lot of components and variables inside it. We'll discuss these. But first, it's important for us to understand the logic of the string class. Because in terms of memory usage and compared to the variables and their usage we've learned so far, it's a bit different. We have to understand this at some point. Now, normally, when you want to write a text or an expression, what you usually do is this. You open double quotes like this and write the expression here. The expression you see inside these double quotes is actually what defines our string variable. Just like when you say integer and assign a number, when you write 5 here, the value 5 is assigned to the integer type variable. In the same way, whatever you use inside double quotes here is assigned to the string variable with the same logic. There are some things you need to pay attention to. For example, if you try to print a number in numeric data, let me show you like this. Let's say system.out. For example, 5. Let's say, when you write 5 here and print it, the space this variable occupies in memory is the default value. Default value, friends. It is of integer type. When you do it like this, for example 5.5, since the value here is a decimal, the default value here, this time it's double. In the same logic, when you do something like this, let's write LVRT. What you see here, that is, the thing inside the double quotes, friends. It represents a string variable. Its type is string. Teacher, is this the default or not? Well, since this is already a string, it doesn't have any extra default. Other classes, yes, are used. We have classes like bouldering, but here, the part inside the double quotes represents a string. Now, why am I explaining this? Why am I talking about this? Normally, we use these kinds of values defined with double quotes without even realizing it. So, these values here are actually constant values as well. You write 5, you write 5.5, you write true or false, all of these variables have to occupy some space in memory. So, whether it's Java or another language, it has to assign these to something. I mean, it has to put these somewhere. It has to write them down. To process these, it needs to find out their type, calculate it, and then perform operations. Java uses default values for things like this. Guys, in other words, it doesn't do it like this. You've written 5 here. So, should I assign this to a short, or maybe to a byte? It doesn't think like that. Guys, alright. So, these have default values. It uses these default values, so 5 as well. It becomes an int. If it's a decimal value, it becomes a double. So, these are the default values. The language, the Java language, has default values. When you define a string here, that is, when you write an expression in double quotes like this, it actually recognizes it as a string variable. So, what kind of feature does this string variable have? I mean, what is it good for? Exactly, let's think about it like this. When I tell you to print your name on the screen, what do you normally do to print your name on the screen? And it's very simple. You'd say, I just write it, teacher. For example, I'd write Muhammet Hoka here. Is that okay? It's okay. Good. But what if I said to you, let's say I put it this way, but we don't know about string variables. If I told you to do this using the variables you already know, you'd have to write it like this, friends. With the variables we've learned up to now. We had this, right? Let me take this now. So, to write your name, you have to write it like this. Look, when I run it, you can see the values. These. Look, this part is Muhammed Hoka. Then comes Muhammad. Look, you can see the expression here. To be able to write Muhammad, you have to gather the elements in system outprint like this. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. Even though what you see here is a string, meaning you write it in double quotes here. And even if you thought you were just getting a string, a combination of letters, what's actually happening in the background is something like this. So, how should I put it? When we define things in Java, our general definitions are always based on primitive data types. You actually use the wrapper classes on top of these to use them more effectively. When it comes to string, let me define the variable like this. String expression. Hello, Java, how are you? When I write an expression like this, my friend, this variable is actually a variable derived from the string class. So its data type is string. So, what should I understand from this? I mean, what is this supposed to tell me? I'm going to go into the string class and see the entire structure that makes up the string. Let me show you how I got there, too. If you want to access any class or method, while holding down the Control key on your keyboard, when you hover over it with your mouse, you'll see a hand icon appear. While holding down Control, you left-click with the mouse. Then, whatever the relevant method or class is, you'll go to it. Look, this is our string class. Inside this string class, there's information related to the value you've entered. Look, right here. There's something here. Look, here, there's a byte. There's a square bracket like this. Here, it also says value. Of course, we haven't seen this square bracket yet, but what this square bracket tells us is that it's an array. It's saying that this is an array. So, what should I understand from this? You need to understand this from it. Guys, what are you doing here? Well, we're writing the expression, or, for example, Hi Kama, how are you? Or Muhammed Hoka. Let's say Muhammad. So, let's say our string variable is Muhammad. How does string store this internally? You can think of it like a char array. In other words, you can think of it as an array of characters. You should remember this from math. What is an array? Do you remember the concept of an array? For example, you should think of this char part like this. Look, what you refer to as a string actually looks like this in the background. Yes, you're making an assignment here, but when it stores it, it keeps it like this. When you use it, it actually uses the data inside it. And inside this string variable, there are some methods to manipulate the string. So, for example, searching for a value inside a string, finding something or finding out whether a letter exists or not, or how to, let's say, find a specified number inside a text. When you want to find the character at a certain index or position, you can do all of these with the methods inside the string. We'll talk about these as well. But first, we need to understand this well. Friends. So, when you refer to something as a string, it actually consists of a collection of characters. What does this provide us? Look, the problem is that since we haven't seen arrays yet, this becomes an issue. You see the basic thing here like this. When you look at it this way, each letter here has a numerical equivalent. Of course. This is actually what you're working with. So, if you remember, the call character. What was the logic behind that? Let's say you have a value entered from the keyboard. Like what? For example, you pressed the letter M. M. The letter is a character as we understand it. But when it goes to the computer, it actually goes as an electric current, as data. It goes as numerical data. When that is processed and displayed on the screen, the computer converts it again so that the letter M appears on the screen. The basic idea here is that every character we use, whether it's a letter, a number, or a special symbol like a question mark, greater than or less than sign, all of these are interpreted by the computer as numerical values. And when displaying them to us, it converts them into a form we can understand. When receiving input from us, it takes the numerical values of those characters, converts them, and continues processing. And when displaying them to us, it shows us the appearance of those numerical values. So, for example, when we look here, you see the letter M in the output step. So, what will you see if I do it like this? What will you see if I come here and write integer, or if I write byte here? Look, I'm running it. M, next to the letter 77. You see it. What is it? It's actually the ASCII character of the capital letter M. You see its numerical value in the table. That's the logic behind it. Here, string actually gives us a clue about how it stores this data. In other words, it provides information about how it is stored here. So, what is this good for? I mean, what is the point of storing it like this? Look, this logic, friends, is the concept of array, what we call an array. Since our data is stored like this in the concept of arrays, each of them has a number. Let me show you like this. For example, we'll start with these as well. Let me write all of these here. Let's even call it index number, just to be clear. Let me express it correctly. Index number. There's something called index number. What does this represent? This is the 0 index inside this array. This is the first index. So, think of it like this. It will continue like this. It's like you drew a table. You wrote down the names of the students in your class. What do you do at the very beginning? You number them. First, student, second, student, third, student, and so on. The logic is the same in arrays. Such an ordering is done, and 0th, index, first, index, second, index, and it continues like that. What is this good for? Actually, this is useful for many things. Friends, we'll talk about it again. There are some methods inside string. As we use these methods, we'll understand better what they're for, since we assume it's stored this way. Let's take some important information from the expression you currently see here, according to what I mentioned above. First, let's proceed to print this to the screen. Let me type system.out and create a space like this. Now I say, for example, I say the period of the expression. For example, I want to take a character from it. For example, a character. What did I say about the value in this? I said char. Look, these are characters, aren't they? Char. Then I say, take a character here. So, what should you take into consideration? Look, char horse. Based on what will it be taken? On top of that, this is a method, friends. When we come to this, look, it tells us something here. It says, give me an index of type integer. What is this index? This index is inside your expression, just like you see here, and this is your expression normally. But I think string keeps it that way. So, for example, this is my statement. Which one are we going to take from inside this statement? For example, look, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for example. That 6 is the value. Look, I'm writing 6 here. What does this bring me? The sixth one inside this statement. It brings the value at the index as a character. Look now. When I run it, I'll see the letter J here. Let's write a few more in the same way. You'll understand the logic of it better. Now, this is 6, okay? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 for example. I took this at 13. 14, 15, 16, 17 for example. Let's take 17 here as well. When we run it, look, J, S, and I got the letters I. So, the logic actually comes from here. I mean, there are a lot of things in this. There are tons of methods like this that you can use. All these methods work in this way. I have a variable in my hand. I can easily get any information I want from it. For example, if this is a string, pay attention. None of the methods created here actually alter the original expression. Guys, so extracting this information from the expression or applying methods to it does not mess up the original thing. It never changes your variable. Alright, let's continue now. For example, let's do this. There's something called substring in system string. Guys, when I hover over substring, it asks me, what is the start index? What is the end index? That's what it's asking. Now, let's see how this works. For example, let the start index be 6. 6. Not. Okay, then it says, what is the end index? It asks. Now, for this, I'll say 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 after 6. 12. So logically, it's from 6 to 12, right? What should Java space correspond to? Let's see what we get in the output. Java, what is the point of emptiness? Why did this happen? You need to know the methods here, friends. You need to know how the methods work. As we talk about these here, he explains them as he solves examples in the following lessons. Rology. When you talk about substring here and customize here, start and end indexes, the logic here is as follows. Friends. Start, yes. So, if you remember from math, when it's written like this, it includes the starting index but excludes the ending index, right friends? It pulls a substring from within the given expression, friends. Substring here means this. It's used to get something within a certain range from inside it. Of course, there are different ways to use substring. So, it's not just one. There are a few different things. You can provide both the start and end, or you just provide the start. It goes from the point you start all the way to the end. These kinds of usages are also possible. But ultimately, friends, the logic behind this always comes down to this. So, when we think about it in terms of this array logic here, it's very easy to understand. So you're saying, take these pieces of information one by one from 5, or rather from 6 up to 12. That's perfectly fine, for example. For instance, let me do this example I just did here, but this time using a for each loop. So instead of doing it with substring, let me do it with a for each. Look, for each was wrong. Let's do it with a for loop. It will be more accurate. To the celebrity, there is a movement from one point to another. Integer, I equals 0. I little 10. This is what I'll write for now, friends. To tell you the story. I'll edit it in a bit. I say open the system. Let's remove that ln. Expression point. Do charAt. I say I. Now look. What is my logic here? We'll talk about that. What was charAt? Friends, it would give you the character at the index number you provided. Nice. So, what is my goal? To start from 6. Look, I'm writing 6 here. To start from 6. That way, the 6th, I'll get the character. It will continue as 6, 7, and so on. So, up to what number do I want to go? I want to go up to 12. So what happens if I write 12 here? Is 12 included? No, it's not. From 6 to 11. Now look, when I run this, both the above and below will give the same result. C Java N. What I did here. Get the character with the given index. This is easy. That's it. Is it okay? So we have a lot of things here. We have a method. We have many string-related methods that we can use. We'll talk about these again. Friends. For now, this was the first thing we needed to understand about the general structure of strings. What is a string? How is it used? What's its logic? We have other details about this. We have methods. We'll talk about strings. Let's finish the first part. Let's continue in the second part.